Okay, so our story, An Abundance of Katherines, the setting is Chicago, very modern, contemporary times. Of course, the story is absolute 100% total fiction, although it really captures the teenage lure of American youth uh, in contemporary times. So the novel begins the morning after noted child prodigy Colin Singleton has graduated from high school and has been dumped for the 19th time by a girl named Catherine. So he's had 19 girlfriends, uh, all named Catherine. Colin takes a bath and notices that he's too big for the bathtub. He feels like an adult pretending to be a kid. Well, I don't know. I'm not so sure. I think he's a kid pretending to be an adult. That's my opinion. Colin reflects on a book he read when he was 4 about Archimedes, who shouted Eureka and ran through the streets when he discovered the phenomena of water displacement. So, Eureka is a key vocabulary word that runs through the story. Whenever he comes up with a new idea that he hadn't thought of before. At the time, Colin asked his mother if he would ever have a eureka moment. She assured him he would. The narrator notes, but mothers lie. It's in the job description. So he's kind of a mother's boy in a way. He's not really independent and on his own, still seeking his mother's for emotional support. Okay, so Colin is too depressed to cry. He gets out of the bathtub and finds his parents sitting on the bed, waiting to talk to him. And this is never a good sign when your parents are waiting to talk to you. Okay, whatever the subject matter is, this is not. Although Colin feels he should be an adult because he's graduated from high school, his relationship with his parents remain one in which they confront him in his bedroom, in which he hopes for their comfort. Well, he doesn't quite get that. A little from his mother, but certainly not from his dad. So he's kind of, all broken up about his girlfriend dumping him, as he calls it. He's getting dumped uh, right on the same night as his graduation. Uh, and he hopes for their comfort. Uh, he finds out that the girlfriend did call, talked to the parents, and said, "Hey, I'm worried about him. He's acting kind of strange, weird. So just wanted to check in, make sure he's okay." Um, Colin feels like he's literally ready to blow up. Um, his father says, "Well, looks like you're not going to be hanging out with your girlfriend this summer. Maybe you should take a course at the local college." Dads are always very practical. Okay, so it's 10 p.m. and our next character enters Colin's bedroom, and his name is Hassan Habish, and he calls him a name in German, and it means you're kind of a wimp, kind of a weak kid, snap out of it, and forget your little depression. And Colin says he wants to die. He all he ever wanted was for her to love him. And the other thing that runs through his story is he wants to do something meaningful with his life. He feels alone again, and he feels like a failure. So Hassan has some choice nicknames for him. Hassan, his parents are from Lebanon. He's practices the Islamic faith, uh, and he tries to kind of kidding around in a way, but he tries to convert Colin into believing in God, which Hassan does very deeply, although he doesn't always follow the rules. Um, he basically says, hey, there's only one solution for you, and that is you should take a road trip. And a road trip is you jump in your car, you don't have any real destination in mind. It's kind of an adventure. Take things as they will, as they come about. And this is actually an American youth cultural um, idea or concept that is practiced today, where kids will, especially after high school, maybe take a little road trip for themselves and kind of explore, get out of their little cloistered small town environment or their big city that they've probably never left or not traveled very far, and to do it on their own without parental supervision. So Colin has to kind of talk his parents into it. They're not really keen on the idea in the beginning, but he manages to talk them into letting him go. 5 minutes later, he's in his car. Again, a very typical American teen car. We would call it a beater. It's an older car, uh, maybe a hand-me-down from the parents before they, instead of trading it in and getting a better car, they give it to their teenage son or daughter, kind of get the feel and practice of driving. Uh, Parents generally do not buy their teenage kids a brand new car, especially today. $20,000 for a new car, kids learning how to drive, things happen, and they do. Better to give them the older car, cheaper insurance. If he cracks it up, no big loss. Okay, so they're in the car heading over to Hussein's parents, get permission to go on this road trip. Hussein's parents are not too keen on the idea either. Hussein is a year older than Colin. He graduated last year, but he didn't go to college. He took a year off. It's called a gap year. But he really didn't do anything special. He just kind of hung around the house and watched TV and wasted time. And his dad's a hardworking guy and wants his son to go get a job. Okay, if you're not going to go to college, go get a job. So they convince Hussein's parents that to go that it gets permission to go on the road trip, and they now Hussein uh, doesn't want to lie to his parents, but it's okay if Colin lies to his parents. Okay, so that's fine. So they say that Colin's going to help him find a job, and it'll be good. Hussein can help Colin get over his broken heart. So they both, they grab their gear, their clothes, throw it in the trunk, and they're headed off to their wild adventure. So um, they find themselves driving down the highway, and Colin is driving, which forces him to concentrate on driving, which takes his mind off his broken heart. So he also has kind of a physical, psychosomatic, physical pain in his stomach through his emotions of his broken heart. And this reminds him of an assassination that happened in history of the Arch Franz, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was assassinated and led to World War One. This is one of the crazy thoughts that passes through his mind as he's driving. So he kind of flashes back to when he was 2 years old, and his father's reading the newspaper. You know, sees Colin sees the print on the back page, and at 2 years old, he starts reading the headlines of the newspaper, and his parents are astonished. They say, "Well," and both his parents are educators. His dad is a university professor. His mother teaches French at a private school. So they notice and recognize right away that their son has some special academic promise. And they teach him how to read uh, in both English and in French. And they took him to a psychologist for an IQ test. And the psychologist says, "Yep, he's a very special person." And while he's in the office, kind of waiting for the results of the testing, he notices a word and he makes what's called an anagram. And an anagram is a little puzzle, kind of a word puzzle. And he takes the word and he takes the letters in the word and he either creates another word using all the letters or maybe a simple phrase or something like that. So, as an example, let's say you took two words, a gentleman, and you wanted to make an anagram of that. An anagram of that would be elegant man. Or take the word funeral, taking the same letters, you could make a little phrase called real fun. And another example is you took McDonald's restaurants, rearrange the letters, you can make a simple sentence. Uncle Sam's Standard Rot, which is kind of a play on junk food. So, um, Colin eventually he goes to a special. They're called gifted children. These are kids that are super smart that go to special schools, and he goes to that kind of pre-nursery school, kindergarten, and he's smarter than everybody else. But he's not toilet trained yet, so the school says no. Sorry, your kid's too smart. He's not toilet trained, so he can't attend school here. So eventually, he enrolls in first grade where his mother teaches. And he was a year younger than most of the other kids. His parents push him hard to study. They kind of wanted him to have a normal childhood. Uh, really kind of developed his social life, which he fails at miserably through most of the story. Um, he was kind of a know-it-all, and he struggled to make friends. He was bullied. So he's really kind of an awkward boy. Um, but girls seem to be attracted to him for some reason. They like it that he's just super smart, but they don't stay with him very long because he's boring, basically, and socially inept, and he can't really tell a good story. It's hard to have a conversation with him. His mind runs in so many different directions, hard to keep up with. So, um, but in third grade, he wins over the heart of a pretty young girl named Catherine. This is Catherine number one. So, um, as he's driving, he's reflecting back on all of these kind of weird, bizarre threads of his past and things that he has studied. So they make it to Kentucky. It's about 3 a.m. in the morning. They pull into a rest stop off the side of the highway, and they're going to try to sleep. He tries to sleep. Hussein's already in the back seat, sleeping away. So he remembers how he met Hassan. Uh, Hassan came to Colin's school when Colin was in the 10th grade. Hassan had spent most of his education in homeschooling, studying at home. So he had no real practical, he has social skills, a lot more than Colin, but maybe not as much as a usual student who would go through a public school system. So Colin makes a kind of a stupid remark in the class, and the whole class laughs at him. And Hassan takes him aside and says, "Hey, look, this is something you shouldn't do, okay?" Um, Hassan kind of babysits him in social situations and does talk to him kind of boy to boy and says, "Hey, you really messed up here. You shouldn't be saying things like that, or you could have said it this way." And Colin respects that. He respects the fact that actually Hassan is kind of well liked. Hassan's kind of short. He's a little fat. He's self-conscious about his looks. They're both kind of geeky in a way. Uh, Hassan is a smart boy. They take advanced classes together. And it's basically Colin's only friend. Okay, so they made it to Kentucky. Um, they get up, start driving again. They again, Colin still is running through this thread of his last Catherine girlfriend, Catherine 19, and it come to find out that they had planned to travel to Paris together, both Colin and Catherine 19, because Colin was on a TV show, a game show, a contest, and it was called Cranal Kids. And it was kind of a test show where they asks kids a bunch of academic questions, and Colin wins the contest, and he wins about $10,000. So he's got money. He doesn't have to worry about how he's going to pay for his trip. Now, because he's obviously not going to Paris with Catherine number 19. So they're driving down the road, and Hassan sees a sign, and the sign says, next exit to see the world's largest wooden crucifix. And Colin said they shouldn't bother because neither of them is Christian, and it will remind him of Catherine number 19. She used to wear a cross, and so he doesn't want to see a crucifix. So time goes by. They want to find some air conditioning because it's getting hot, and Colin's old car has air conditioning, but it doesn't work, and rolling the windows down doesn't really help. So they see another sign that says the gravesite of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, exit 212 in Tennessee. So Colin remembers back that just the night before, he had kind of a thought about the Archduke, and they decide to go see the gravesite. Now, how the gravesite of the Archduke ends up in this little town in Tennessee is another story. And it's time to grab a bite to eat. So they find a little kind of off-the-road restaurant called Hardee's. Hardee's is kind of McDonald's-like. It's hamburgers and greasy food and soda. And yeah, it's okay once in a while, but you don't want to make a steady habit of it. And so they stop there, and they talk to the waitress, who gives them directions to the gravesite. And it's in a little town called Gunshot, Tennessee, a real small town. It's got a population of less than 900 people. And the waitress tells them it's out in the sticks. And out in the sticks means you are surrounded by forest and trees and woods, and that's about it. So Hassan, who is Arab, uh, is kind of worried about going out into the sticks. He doesn't look like a normal, he doesn't look like a regular person from Tennessee. Obviously, he's a different cultural background. And he thinks they're going to die there. So he's a little worried about going out into the countryside and being a minority person. So they follow the directions of the waitress, and they come to a bright pink two-story building made out of concrete. And there's a sign outside that says, "The Kingdom of Gunshot, eternal resting place of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, ice cold beer, soda, and bait." And bait means that's what you buy to go fishing. So they go into the store, and they notice there's a kind of a pretty young girl um, who is the clerk, and she's reading a magazine called Celebrity Living. And these are kind of junky magazines that talk about who's dating who and who got divorced and who got married, all the famous movie and TV celebrities, Junkie magazine. And they start kind of talking with the girl. And Hassan, it's kind of funny the way he introduces himself. Uh, Hassan introduces himself as Hassan Habish, Sunni Muslim, not a terrorist. And the girl's name is Lindsay Lee Wells. And she replies back, Lindsay Lee Wells, Methodist, me neither. Okay, so kind of a funny little introduction between the two. And she is the tour guide to go to the gravesite of the Archduke. And it costs $11 each. So they pay the money, but she puts it in her pocket. She doesn't put it in the cash register. So kind of curious about that. So the three of them leave the store and they have to hike up into the woods to the cemetery where the Archduke is buried. So, of course, Colin's kind of a fuzzy-brained kid. He's thinking about everything except what he should be doing, and he slips and falls and hits his head on a rock and cuts his forehead open. So there's kind of a little injury and catastrophe on the field, so to speak. And uh, Lindsay is a medic in training. Um, she patches him up really quick. She runs back to the store, gets a first aid kit, comes running back, um, kind of patches him up a little better, and they continue on their way. They paid the money, so let's go see the gravesite. So, um, along the way, Colin has a notebook and a pencil. And I guess as he's waiting for Lindsay to come back with the first aid kit, he kind of sits up and he's working on a theorem to predict relationship outcomes. So, along with anagramming and being able to speak 11 different languages, Colin's other pursuit is making graphs and theories. He's got lots of theories. But he wants to predict relationship outcomes because he's been dumped so many times. So that in the future, he would be able to predict whether he's going to get dumped again. Okay, so he kind of flashes back to uh, Catherine, another Catherine. He calls Catherine number one. And because of his being bullied in school, he is only taking a few regular classes. And then the rest of the day, he goes down to the library where he has a tutor. And the tutor's name is Crazy Keith. Now, Crazy Keith is a friend of Colin's father at the university. And he really gets along well with Colin, and Colin learns a lot from him. And so he uh, meets Crazy Keith's daughter, who he calls Catherine number one, and he really gets his first kiss and he's thinking about this. So throughout the whole story is this thread of Colin doing something and then thinking about one of the Catherines, doing something else, and that reminds him of Catherine, and he starts thinking about her. Okay, so um, they finally get up to the gravesite, and Lindsay has this whole tourist spiel that she usually gives, and she says, "Hey," she recognizes that Colin probably knows more about the Archduke than she does, so she skips the whole uh, tourist story, and he kind of talks a little bit about the Archduke. He talks a little bit about the history and about the family and what the family really thought of him and so forth. And they're kind of admiring the gravesite. And then next enters some characters. This is Lindsay's friends from school. They're coming up the hill to meet Lindsay. They've gone to the store. They see the store is closed. They know that she must be on a tour. So the two boys introduce themselves not as who they are, but as some French tourists, kind of playing with the heads of Lindsay's friends as a joke. And so finally, they come clean and explain who they really are. And one of the boys is also named Colin, and this is Lindsay's boyfriend. He's kind of a big, husky farmer kid, tough, strong. Okay, and that's Lindsay's boyfriend. And he becomes TOC, a nickname Hassan and Colin give him, and that means the other Colin. The two other boys get nicknames as well. One is called Jeans Are Too Tight. His name is Chase. And Fulton becomes Short One Chewing Tobacco. And there's another girl, and she is Katrina. Not not a Catherine, but a Katrina. So Colin has no interest in a Katrina. That would ruin his record. Okay, so they go back to the store and they meet Lindsay's mother. And Lindsay's mother's name is Hollis, and she owns a business. It's a textile mill that makes a very weird product today. And she keeps many of the local people in the town employed. Um, she has done very well financially in the past, although the business is kind of running into trouble now. But that comes out later in the story. So Hollis recognizes Colin from the TV show Cradle Kids, and everyone's shocked because Colin thinks, "Hey, who would have watched that program anyway?" But somebody did, and somebody recognizes Colin for being on the show and winning the show. So he feels, kind of celebrity like. Hollis takes a liking to him right off the bat because he won the game show and he's probably one of the more famous people that have ever come to um, this little town, Gunshot, Tennessee. So she invites Colin and Hassan to dinner. And they go to the house, make a long story short. They go to the house, they have dinner. It's kind of a funny little scene getting to know the family and who's who, having dinner together. So they end up staying the night. It's a huge house, again, because Hollis did well financially. Very comfortable house. And Hollis invites them to spend the summer there and gives them jobs. And the job is to go around and meet the local residents of the small town and record their life stories for a project, possibly a book or some kind of memory thing for the historical society about the history of the town and the people who have lived there and some of the past stories. So the boys accept the job offer. It pays $500 a week apiece, free room and board. And the only thing that Colin wants is some time, in addition to working, to work on his theorems. And they say, yeah, sure, no problem. You'll have plenty of time to work on your theorems. Lindsay does speak a little German, so she and Colin starting to get to know each other a little bit. I mean, she already has a boyfriend, so friend and friend. Let's see, not girlfriend, but friend plus girl type of thing. Uh, he the house is pink, which is really kind of unusual. Um, they talk a lot about who they are and what they've done, and come to find out, Lindsay's good looking now, and she's a popular kid now, but she wasn't when she was younger. Well, at least she thought she wasn't. And they noticed some pictures of her when she was younger, and they asked, who is this? It doesn't look anything like you. And this was during her kind of makeover time. She wasn't so popular. She goes and try to mix her whole fashion and persona over, uh, and basically it failed and made it even worse for her. And then suddenly she decides she wants to be popular, and she starts acting like a popular kid, and she becomes popular. Okay, so um, now when Hollis uh, explains this to Colin and Hassan, um, Lindsay says a swear word. And this area of America is deeply fundamentalist Christian. The church plays a big part in the community. People reference the Bible a lot in their everyday speech, even today. So there's this kind of backdrop of um, correct language to use. And both Lindsay and Hollis swear a lot, but they're trying to break that bad habit. So in the house is a little jar, okay, a little glass jar. And they've promised each other in a way to break their bad habit that every time they swear, they have to put a quarter, 25 cents, into the swear jar. They call it the swear jar. So Lindsay has just said a swear word. Hollis calls her out on it, says, okay, put 25 cents in the swear jar. Lindsay only has $1. So she swears 3 more times to bring the penalty up to $1. And she puts $1 in the swear jar. Kind of a cute little family custom. So the next morning, they go on their first interview. And they go visit the house of a man named Starnes. And Starnes is very old. They open the door and they meet Starnes. And Starnes has his jaw is missing. He looks very distorted. And he notices the boys kind of staring at him and he says, "Oh, it's cancer." Yeah. Okay. So Starnes invites them in. They sit down. Colin must have a super sense of smell because he's kind of coming into the new environment. He smells something again that reminds him of Catherine 19's basement. When they were dating, they used to go hide out and watch movies together. And he starts reminiscing in his mind about those days. So he's not really paying close attention to what's going on. So actually, Lindsay and Hassan conduct the interview. So Starnes is his house has no air conditioning, and it gets really hot and humid in Tennessee in the summertime. So they're there for quite a while, and Colin makes a comment that he's really getting uncomfortable with the heat, and it's really hard to make $100. Okay. Yep, it is. No kidding. It's called work. Okay, so um, Lindsay is kind of odd in a way. I mean, with the boys and with her mother, she speaks in one way, but when she's with the old timers, she puts on this really heavy, thick, kind of southern accent. We're not quite sure why does that. I think she's just trying to show that she's a local girl and she kind of behaves within the local code of speech. So Starnes has stayed in the area for his entire life. He started to work at the factory when he was very young, and he worked there for 60 years. So, of course, now he's retired and he gets a retirement benefit from the factory. And he talks about Lindsay's father. And this is the first mention of a father in the story. His name is Alex. And Starnes calls him kind of a bad name. We don't know the backdrop of Lindsay's father yet, but he doesn't seem to be well liked by anyone. However, Starnes does remark about the Lindsay's great grandfather, Dr. Zinzenvar, who originally came to the area and created the textile mill and hired the local people there. Now, there was a time back in the 20s and 30s, it's called the Great Depression. And a lot of people were out of work, a lot of people lost their homes. It's a very tragic time in American history. But the factory was still up and running, and Dr. Dinzenbach had to lay off some of the employees. What he did was, this was kind of a very nice thing to do, was he made sure that at least one member of every family had at least one person still working in the factory so that each family had some kind of financial resources coming in to help get them through the Depression times. So he was really kind of well liked, well known, respected owner of the textile mill. And we find out later that Hollis really wants to carry on that tradition, but we're getting there. So um, the boys finish the interview. The Lindsay wants to go back to the general store where her boyfriend, TOC, is kind of watching over things while Lindsay's out doing the interviews. So she tells Colin and Hassan, hey, get lost. I want to spend some romantic time with the boyfriend. Don't come back until 5:30. So Colin and Hassan jump in the car, drive around the countryside. They're talking. And these two boys have a kind of unusual relationship with each other. They both tease each other somewhat brutally at times. And it comes to a point where they agree and decide that when one of them is teasing the other to a point that touches a real soft spot, that they're going to say a word, and the word is dingleberry, and it means a fool or stupid. And they agree that if one of them says dingleberry, that the other will stop teasing the other boy. And they do agree to it, and throughout the story, they do shout out the secret word several times as they're teasing each other. The uh, the other thing that happens is uh, Colin thinks he should call the ex girlfriend Catherine 19, and Hassan says this is a really bad idea. You never call your ex girlfriend, and they get kind of into a little, not really argument, but Collins kind of really thinks he should go through it, and Hassan eventually talks him out of doing it. Okay, so that was close. Again, Hassan kind of keeps an eye on Colin for these social norms that Colin doesn't seem to have a very good handle on. Okay, so they come back to the gunshot general store on at 5:30, about an hour early. They come in the store, they interrupt Lindsay, TOC, having a kissy face time on the couch. They're truly uh, angry about being interrupted. So the conversation they have with TOC He realizes now that the boys are going to be staying at the house with Lindsay and Hollis, and he's kind of a jealous guy. And he basically says, uh, if uh, if Colin or Hassan touches Lindsay in any way while they're living with her, I'll kill you. Okay. So, of course, at this point, nobody has any intentions of doing anything of the kind. So, all right. So they go back to Hollis's house, and they have a cookout outside. They're going to eat dinner outside, and this is the first time that Colin sees the backyard to the house, and it's huge. And he's totally amazed at the size of it. Now, he's a city kid. Nobody has a backyard. If you do, it's like 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay, and here's this huge, wide open spaces. So he has a kind of he's kind of amazed by all of this, and he decides to call his parents to let them know where he's staying and that he's all right. So he calls the parents and he says, you know, I'm going to be staying with these nice people. Lindsay and Hollis is her mother, and we're staying here in Gunshot, Tennessee. And the parents are not too happy about this. They know that Colin is severely lacking in not only social skills, but he's too trusting and very naive. So he tries to convince them on his own, but the parents aren't buying it, and they say to him, "Can we speak to Hollis, Lindsay's mother?" And he hands the phone to Hollis, and Hollis is quite uh, gregarious and is a parent too, and she, you know, realizes that you know she comforts Colin's parents and kind of shows them that they're in a safe place and they'll be fine. So the parents kind of give in and okay, it's okay to stay. Colin's mother hopes that he kind of gets his social skills in order, becomes more of a normal kid. And this staying at the house might be a chance for him to do that. Okay, so they go and going to have their next interview the next day. Hollis is crashed out on the couch. She seems to sleep on the couch at night with the falling asleep to the TV on, the like the home shopping network, covered in papers from her work. And she leaves a note on the kitchen table for the boys for their next interview. And um, I, I think at this one here, they're going to go to an old folks home where some of the lady retirees are living now. And what Hollis wants to do, she says, you know, the 6 hour thing is too much. I basically just want you from now on to ask four basic questions. And so they have to drive for a while. Lindsay goes with them. She knows these four ladies that they're going to interview. And Again, they come up to the nursing home. They meet the four ladies. Lindsay is kind of the favored person. And she again breaks into this real Southern accent, acting very differently with them than she does with Colin and Hassan. So, Colin notices this, and the ladies really think that Lindsay is really kind of, they haven't seen her in a while, and they think she's grown up and she's really pretty looking, and she's kind of the favorite girl. And they they interview the four women, and again that afternoon they've got free time. So what Hollis has kept telling them is, don't come back to the house until 5:30. Well, they get done with the interview early, and of course, uh, Lindsay wants to go back and spend uh, romantic time with her boyfriend. She asked to be dropped off. And Colin realizes that Lindsay trusts them. And she, to the point where Colin feels like for the first time in his life, he now has two friends. Okay. So not very good at friend making. Okay. So they kind of go back to the house a little early than they should have. Uh, Hollis is really upset about this. Um, they discover something that the women say that really kind of troubles Lindsay a little bit. And the gossip is that Hollis is selling off some of the property that she owns in addition to the factory. And this worries Lindsay. A couple of different things. One, why is she selling property? And two, she's selling it to a real estate developer. Now, Hollis has said in the past that number one, she'd never sell the land. And number two, if she ever did sell the land, she didn't want to have it turned into some kind of housing development. And the man that she's selling the property to has every intention of turning it into a housing development. So Lindsay doesn't confront her mother directly at this point in the story about what she's heard, but it is very troubling to her. Okay, so even though they kind of break the rule, Hollis is upset with them. They do have dinner together. Um, Hassan and Colin are invited by Lindsay to go and hang out with her friends, TOC, the other boy, and Katrina that night. But of course, Colin's not a big meet and greet party guy. He decides to stay home and work on his theorem. He does. Hassan goes out and hangs out with Lindsay's friends, comes back, tells Colin he had a great time. He even drank a half a beer. And the other girl, Katrina, has taken a liking to him, and he even kissed her, or she kissed him. So, things are going pretty well for Hassan right now. First girlfriend, first kiss, probably first half a beer he's ever drank, which is considered haram, which is against the religious teachings of Islam. So Hassan is kind of breaking out of his shy routine, and he really enjoyed his time with TOC and the other two boys and Lindsay out just kind of hanging out in the local town. And there was some talk about a future event, which would be to again meet up with the group and to go out um, hunting pigs. So this is not going to happen right away. So there's a few days in between, and of course, Colin and Hassan have never shot a gun. They know nothing about guns. They know nothing about hunting. And, they're city kids and they know nothing about the woods or survival in the woods. And they're not too keen on the idea of um, running around with guns shooting animals. So they, uh, they decide that, if they do go hunting, they're not going to kill anything. Okay. So they next interview is to go to the factory and to interview the present day workers there. And they do. And they interview several people in the factory. And the last interviewee is a girl about 25. So she'd be about 6 years older than Colin, and her name is Catherine. Okay, just what Colin needs to meet another girl named Catherine. And Catherine is a real good looker, but she is older, and she has heard that one of the two boys is a genius. And she comes in and she says, "Which one of you guys is the genius?" And Colin says, "No, I'm not a genius, but you must be referring to me." And she says, "Well, I have a question for you." She says, "You know when you take a shower, and the shower curtain always seems to get sucked into the shower area rather than being blown out. And I've always wondered why that is." And wouldn't you know, Colin actually has an answer for it. And it has to do with the vortex and wind and shower and barometric pressure and all of that sort of thing. And he explains it to Catherine. And she's satisfied with the answer. And that kind of ends their interview for the day. Now, uh, Colin again and Lindsay and Hassan have finished a little early. Uh, they dropped Lindsay off at the general store, and Colin and Hassan go back out to kill some time. This time, Hassan is not so successful. Colin thinks he should call Catherine 19. They get into a little bit of an argument. He goes out to a field on this deserted road so he can get reception for his phone. He does indeed call Catherine. She doesn't answer. He leaves her, I'm still in love with you message. He finishes his message, hangs up the phone, starts walking back to the road. Hassan has already left angrily, and what he does is he goes and picks up Lindsay and then comes back to meet Colin. As Colin's walking back to the road, the phone rings. It's Catherine 19. And she says right away, yeah, you know, I think it was really a good idea that we separated. And, Colin says, hey, did you listen to my message? She says, no need to. No, we made the right decision. And we probably shouldn't talk again for a while. Now, Colin is absolutely devastated. He he walks out to the road. Uh, Lindsay and Hassan coming down the road. They pick him up and take him back to the house. And of course, he's crying. He's all upset. There's absolutely no chance for them to ever get back together again. Crying. Yeah, so he goes to his room. He's going to work on his theorem. He works on it for several hours. He's not getting anywhere. It's very frustrating. He does what most geniuses do when things don't go their way. They want to burn their notes, give it up, throw it away. So he searches the room for matches, can't find any. Goes asks Hassan if he's got matches. Of course, he doesn't. Knocks on Lindsay's door. Um, she says, yeah, I've got matches, but what do you want to do? And Colin tells her that he wants to burn his notes, that the theorem isn't working out, and he's done with it. She says, oh, well, let me take a look at it. So they sit down together and they kind of go through the notes, and she understands a good bit of it. And she says, well, look, um, let me hold on to your notes for a couple of days. And if you still want to burn your notebook in a few days, we'll go burn it together. Okay, fair enough. Colin goes back to his room, sleeps. The next day, uh, Hassan decides that he doesn't want to go to work, and he just sleeps in for the day. So um, Colin and Lindsay go off together to do an interview. I think it's like a Friday night, possibly. So at the end of the interview day, um, they come back home, and Lindsay and Hassan want to go hang out with TOC and the boys. And just kind of have a small town friend gathering, which they do, but Colin wants to stay home and read. And he reads a book about Thomas Edison, and he finishes that book, and he finds a book on the bookshelf in his room called Foxfire. And Foxfire is a true book series about survival in Appalachia in the mountains. People live in log cabins, make their own furniture, eat wild game, that sort of thing. And again, he has a great memory to recall everything that he reads. And this is going to become important a little later in our story. So, nevertheless, Hassan and Lindsay return, and Hassan tells him that he had a great time, and he met a girl, the other girl in their group, Katrina, and they seemed to be kind of hitting it off a little bit. And he even drank a beer, which is, like I said, he practices Islam but doesn't always follow the rules. And so he said he had a good time hanging out with them. It was kind of a little adventure. Okay, so it's the weekend. Um, Hassan decides to go out again over the weekend. Uh, he actually gets kissed by the girl, Katrina. Comes back and tells Colin all about his romantic interlude. Colin just doesn't seem to be impressed by this at all. Hassan's kind of angry with him. Hassan has always been there for Colin through his ups and downs, through his romantic life, and yet when Hassan has a little romantic story to share, Colin seems disinterested. So this kind of weighs on their friendship a little bit. They don't talk for several hours, but Hassan finally explains to him, "Hey, I've been at your side all this time, and when it happens to me, you don't seem to care." And Colin reflects on that, and he's kind of sensitive, and he realizes that he should have been a better friend in that situation. So during the last couple of times out that Hassan has been hanging around with the local TOC and um, Katrina and the other two boys. Coming up in a few days, they decided that they would go on a hunting trip together. And they invited Hassan and Colin to come along. Now, both Hassan and Colin have no experience in the woods, not even camping, no idea how to shoot a gun, no idea what's involved in hunting. But nevertheless, they feel as though they should go along. So some time passes, they do some more interviews. Lindsay is getting some clue about what's going on. Uh, Hollis is going to be selling some property. Uh, she is curious why her mother's going to be selling some land. She wonders why she's selling the land to a developer, something that she said her mother would never do, and yet she is. So something's going on, and Lindsay wants to find out. But she can't do it, obviously. She kind of has to sneak around and figure out what's going on her own. She can't just come up to Hollis and say, "Hey, why are you selling that property?" Okay, so there's a few days before the hunting trip, and Lindsay goes out and finds a shotgun to teach Colin how to shoot a rifle. She doesn't want Colin to embarrass her on the hunting trip. So they leave together, leave the house together, and go out to that property that Lindsay's mother, Hollis, is going to sell. And it's a big stretch of wooded property. And she takes the shotgun out and fires it off a few times and instructs Colin into how to hold a gun, and how to squeeze the trigger properly, how to aim it. And she warns him that the gun is really powerful. And when you shoot it, the gun will recoil. It kicks back. Uh, and she kind of, warns Colin about this, but, he doesn't really pay attention. So she loads up the gun for Colin to practice his first shot. And he shoots the rifle and he falls down on his back because the gun is so powerful. Of course, not listening to what Lindsay had said earlier. So he practices some more, and they shoot up all the forest and all the ammunition, and yeah, he knows how to shoot a gun now. After the shooting practice with Lindsay, she takes Colin into the woods down this long, dark trail to a secret place that she calls her own. And it's kind of up a little hill, and there's a little opening in the rocks. And you kind of have to squeeze through to get inside, but inside, she's got a flashlight and some ground coverings, blankets, a nice cozy little hideout place that she has never brought anyone to. And it's her secret little place that she likes to go to for her alone time to try to figure out, whatever's going on at the moment in her own mental processes. But you can see that her friendship with Colin is becoming more and more trustworthy. She likes him. He's still in the friend zone. But she will go to the extent where she will actually share her secret hiding place with Colin. And this plays kind of an important part in our story down the road. Okay, so hunting day comes. They get up real early in the morning before the sun, even before the rooster crows that usually wakes up Colin every morning. They're up and out of the house. They're going to a camp, a little hunting lodge, a little cabin. And TOC, the two boys, and the girl, Katrina, are there. And there's an older gentleman there. And come to find out that this is TOC's father, who is an expert pig hunter. And they decide to go off in different groups. So Colin and Hassan are assigned to TOC's father. Again, he's a guide, and he wants to make sure the two city boys don't get into any trouble. So they start off their hunting expedition. It's kind of a nice little walk through the woods. And what they're looking for is these dug up mounds of fresh dirt that the wild pig digs up looking for roots to eat. So he takes them through the woods, and they start to find these. Actually, it's Colin that discovers it. Finds these dug up piles of dirt. He says, "Well, where there's one, there's more, and once we find more, we know the trail." And they search around, and they find more. So they find the trail, and now TOC's dad isn't walking; he's actually running through the woods because he's tracking this wild pig that they're hunting. And he's going quite fast, and the two boys are out of breath, exhausted in a short period of time. They kind of wimp out. They tell TOC's dad, "Hey, look, we just can't make it. We're out of breath. We're exhausted. We're going to sit here. We're going to rest." And he says, "Well, okay, I really want to go get this pig, so if you guys are going to quit, that's fine. Stay here, and I'll come back for you." Okay, fair enough. So they find a log. They sit down, and they're kind of talking, and of course, Colin's doing his usual reminiscing and going from one thought to another. They had some sandwiches that were made up, and they eat up all the sandwiches and drink the water that they have. And it's been quite a while now since Yossi's dad left. And all of a sudden, they kind of hear a strange noise in the brush, a little far away from them, but not too close. And they stop talking and they become very quiet. And suddenly they see a wild pig uh, in the brush, and it's walking toward them. Now, they did keep their rifles. The pig is spots them, sees them, and these wild pigs have these huge teeth that grow up into like a tusk outside their mouth. And when they attack another animal, they use those as a for defense and kind of stick it into the animal with their head. So Colin had read a little bit about this in the Foxfire books that he was reading up in his room a few days before, and he knows that the wild pig is going to charge after them. So he stands up with the rifle. Uh, the boar really notices them now and starts to charge toward them. He fires the rifle at the pig. Totally misses. But the pig is becomes afraid of the sound of the gunshot and turns around and runs away. Okay, good. They're safe. They scared the pig away. Everything's good. Colin looks at the tree that he just shot, and he notices that something's coming out of the tree. Doesn't know what. There's movement from the bullet hole. They just went into the tree. All of a sudden, he realizes he didn't shoot a tree. He shot a bee's nest, not the cute little honeybees that go from flower to flower that you see in your garden. These are wasps. Wasps are about twice the size of a regular bee. And if a honeybee stings you, which would be really unusual, it can sting you once and then it dies. And the The poison that's in the honeybee is just a little, just enough to irritate. But the poison in the wasp is abundant, and they can sting many, many, many times. And so they see the wasp coming toward them in a swarm, a whole group of them. So now they are totally panicked. They're running through the woods just to get away from the wasps. They each get stung multiple times. Finally, they ran far enough away that the wasps returned back to their nest, and they've totally lost their way. They don't know where they are. They're lost in the woods in Tennessee. So they have a little bit of adventure for the next couple of hours, trying to find their way back. They come to a roadway that looks familiar to Colin. It's not the roadway that the camp was on. It was a familiar road. And that road was the road to the gravesite of the Archduke that they had been on their first day. Walking up the roadway, and they can see the cemetery and the gravestone for the Archduke. And there's something going on there. They're not quite sure, but they can see some movement kind of in the background behind the tombstone. And they come up upon the grave and they find TOC and Katrina in the middle of a romantic interlude. So basically they get caught by Colin and Hassan. Quickly things come together. TOC says he's not cheating. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you are. Katrina's all kinds of sorry. Said, oh, this is the last time. But says it's been going on for quite a while. TOC threatens to beat them up if they say anything to Lindsay. Okay, so meanwhile, as they're talking, Colin reaches down into his pants pocket where he has the tape recorder, and he turns it on, and he starts recording everything that TOC are saying about being caught. So after a while, Lindsay, Colin's two friends, the two other young boys, come and they see everybody gathered at the tombstone. So they come over and how you doing and what's going on, and Colin pulls out the tape recorder and plays to Lindsay what has been said in the last 15 minutes. It becomes obvious to Lindsay that TOC and Katrina have been cheating on her for quite a while. A fight breaks out between TOC and Colin and Hassan. Hassan seems to take the worst of it. He gets a broken lip and a few bruises. Lindsay and finally the two friends of TOC get in the middle of the fight as well, and they don't like what's going on. They think that TOC's a jerk for doing what he's been doing to Lindsay all this time. And so they kind of break up the fight between TOC and Colin and Hassan. TOC storms off, knowing full well it's all over between himself and Lindsay. Lindsay goes, gets some first aid, patches them up, gets them back to the house. She's obviously very upset about what's going on. They kind of have dinner and go to bed and rest. Lindsay gets up sort of early, gets Colin up. They're supposed to go do an interview today. She's had some time to think about things during the night, and she's not too broken up about TOC. She's kind of glad it's over in some ways. Now, what she's sort of wrestling with is what's going on with her mother, Hollis, and something that was said by one of the old ladies a while back about the business. And why is she selling that land to a developer, which she said she would never do? Okay, so she tells Colin and Hassan, we're going to skip the interview today and we're going to drive down to the factory. Hollis is supposed to be there later in the day, but Lindsay wants to beat her to the punch and see what's going on for herself. Now, she's kind of knows where it is, but not exactly. She may have been there many years ago. So they hop in Colin's car and they drive down to the factory. It's quite a ways away. And they come on to the site and through the back way, and they see a machine that is carrying these boxes of the product that the factory makes. And out back in the big field is a big hole. And they're dumping the product boxes into the hole and covering it up. And she's wondering, what is going on here? Why we're making this stuff and now we're dumping it into a hole in back of the factory? What's going on? So eventually Hollis shows up and Lindsay kind of lays into her and says, what's going on here? We're burying product. What are you doing? You're going to sell property that you said you never want to sell. So Hollis confesses that for the past 2 years, the only 30% of the product is being bought. And she's kind of funding the factory to keep everybody employed. And she knows that people will lose their jobs and there's nothing else in the town for them to make money. So Lindsay kind of understands that like her grandfather before, that her mother is trying to save the town and save people's jobs. And the mother says, we've got about 5 years worth of money left that we can continue to do this. So they kind of go back to the house. Lindsay's now got 2 kind of heavy emotional burdens going on for herself. Colin and Hassan drive back to the house in Colin's car, and Lindsay and her mother, try to talk things out on the way back home. So Colin and Hassan get there first, and Hollis comes in, but there's no Lindsay. And Colin asks, where's Lindsay? And she said, she went to stay at a friend Janet's house for the night. She wants to kind of think things out for herself. So Colin suspects that that's not true. He thinks it's kind of a message. So Hassan wants to stay with Hollis and try to come up with some ideas where they can maybe make some money with the textile factory. And Colin sort of excuses himself and says he's going to go camping. He's never spent a night alone in the woods before, and grabs a sleeping bag and throws it in the car, and he drives out to Lindsay's secret place that he had visited with her back in the story when Lindsay was showing him how to shoot the rifle. He finds his way, and sure enough, Lindsay's there. So he goes into the little cave with her, and they talk for a long time. And their friendship is progressing on. Lindsay would be his first girlfriend that isn't a Katherine. And, Lindsay confesses she's kind of glad it's over with TOC. He was kind of a jerk anyway. So they kind of form a new relationship. So they stay out pretty late, but not all night. And they go back to the house and kind of sneak in quietly, and, they get up in the morning the next day, and Colin is still worried about being dumped. So Lindsay plays kind of a joke on him and says, puts a note on the bed so that when he wakes up, he's going to see the note. And the note says something like, I'm sorry. I don't think this is going to work out. I'm really more in love with Hassan. And then she ends the note by saying, just kidding. So, kind of, playing a kind of bad joke on Colin because he's so sensitive. But anyway, he gets the joke, and they're all good. So they kind of, get things organized during the day, and they decide a little later that they're going to go to Hardee's to get something to eat. So they all jump into Colin's car, Hassan, Lindsay, Colin, and they start driving to Hardee's. And then Lindsay says, Hardee's is not really good. Let's go to the Wendy's. It's a couple exits down the highway. And they get things called salad, something there that she would like. So they decide to go to the Wendy's down the highway. And as they're driving, she says, we could just keep going. And there's still plenty of time left on their summer vacation. They've got money. Lindsay doesn't really have to be anywhere. And the story ends that they drive on, and that's the end of the story. We don't know where they're going or where they're going to end up, but they're kind of back on their road trip. Again, this time, Colin has a new girlfriend who's not a Catherine. And that's hopefully where the happy ending is. Okay, so that's the conclusion of our story, An Abundance with Katherines.